I'm George Pearson, and these are just a few examples from some of the training videos I have here on YouTube. Now, when you're working with the training, following along the training, if you want to get the materials I used in the training, just go to the description down below and click on the link that's at the top of the description, and this will take you to a page where you can download the materials. Please subscribe, click the like button, and of course always share on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the video. This is a special video about how to do feathering effects. Now, when I'm talking about feathering, I'm talking about this effect here. You can see it real easy here, where you have a soft edge. Something fades out, and it gives you this soft edge. This is one effect, and it's used quite a bit on images like this, things for wedding albums and so forth. Another way of looking at this over here, again, this also has a soft edge fade out. In this case, the color image is fading out, feathering into the black and white image in behind. Now, there are several ways of doing a feathered edge. Both of these use my preferred technique, which is to create a nice layer mask over here, a hard edge layer mask, and then soften the edge of the layer mask. And that softened edge of the layer mask gives you that feathering effect. It's very, very controllable this way. One of the reasons I like that. But you can also do this by using the feathering tools that are available inside of Photoshop Elements. Let's take a look at some of that. Just close this stuff out. Here's a little example of a feathered edge created using the feathering tool up under Select. And that's Select Feather right down there. I'll show you how that's done. But before I get into how you actually make this work and how you do the soft edge as well using a layer mask, let's take a look at exactly what happens when you're working with feathering. And this should make it all very, very clear. If you understand what it's doing, you then will understand how you can apply the feathering effect. Now for this, I just have a rounded corner rectangle here, a blue rectangle on a white background. Real basic stuff. I'll grab my magic wand here and just click in the middle. That gives me a nice tight selection right around the edge of that shape. Now there's no feathering on this at all, just real nice tight selection. So if I go up here to Layer, New, via Copy, I get a copy of that layer and just that blue part. If I now put a different background color behind this, let's put a black background color back here. There you go. Again, nice tight edge because that's what we selected. So with no feathering involved, we get a nice tight clean edge. Okay, let's now take a look at the same thing. I'll come back down here again. I'll make my selection again. There we go. And this time let's put in a feathering on this. So you have your selection and go up here to Select and then Feather, and I have my feather radius set at 25 pixels. Now what this does is it moves this selection out 25 pixels. So it goes from here out to here. And then it takes this area here and goes 100% opaque to 0 opaque. 100% opacity to 0 opacity. It changes the opacity level inside that 25 pixel range. Now the upshot of that is, if I feather this, I'm going to get some white around this if I put this image on the black background. We'll take a look and see how that's done. Let's choose OK. Now you're not seeing anything here yet, but let me go ahead and make a copy of this. So Layer, New, via Copy. There we go. Here's our black layer. I'll move this one above the black layer. And there you go. There is that edge. We can now see exactly what's happening in here. So we have our edge right here, 25 pixels, and notice how we're going from purely opaque here, and then it is going out to transparent out here. And we have a 25 pixel area here where that's happening. So we're not just getting just a softness happening just from the image out. We're also getting softness over the whole edge of the image. So actually it's giving us a range in here of softening. So this may not be what you would expect. You might think, okay, it's just going to take this and give me a soft edge, or it's going to expand the blue, give me a soft blue edge. That's not what it does. It takes the 25 pixel value. You can see it's out here 25 pixels and in 25 pixels. I can actually prove that. Let me just click on my layers up here on the ruler, change this to pixel dimensions. I'll grab my ruler there and just put it right up against the edge. There we go, that's pretty good. And then I'll move this over like that, and you can see here is our scale. So there is 20 pixels, 30 is about here, so 25 is right about there, 25 pixels, and that's the edge. So it is making this transparent 25 pixels out, and also look down here, we have 20, 30 is about here, 25 is about there. That's right where that black is showing. It's giving me a feathering in here of 25 pixels as well. So it may not be giving you the effect that you expect when you have this kind of a softening happen. Now it only really shows if you put this on a background that's different from your original background. Let's do something different. I'll leave that where it is. I'll make a new layer in here, and let's put a white layer. I'll fill this with white. Paint bucket and fill. There we go. So it's going to white. So what's happening now is, notice how it's going more and more transparent. 25 pixels and then 25 pixels beyond that selection as well. And it's giving me a softer edge, just kind of a slightly softened edge. But again, it may not be exactly what it is that you're thinking of if you're trying to get that soft edge. But that's what that feathering tool does up here under select, is that it takes your selection and then it feathers to both directions on that kind of softening up the edge, but maybe not exactly how you would think that would work. But it is a nice effect. It's an effect that does work sometimes. Here we go. Here's that effect. Now, in this instance, if I zoom in, I did a 25 pixel on this as well, but I have a much larger range in here. So I was out quite a ways on my selection. The selection actually right in the middle of this range in here. So it's fading it out across that range, and it gives me that soft edge effect. But again, notice I'm seeing the background in here. That's the important thing to keep in mind. I'm seeing the background. Whenever you come in and make a selection and you do a feathering on that, you're going to be seeing background from your original picture transferred into your feathered picture. That's what happens when you do feathering. You see your background. And that's what's happening here. It doesn't show here because I'm putting it on the same colored background. If I change my background, you can see though there is some of that white background pulled through from the original white background. So again, that's the way that feathering works. Okay, let's say now that we know how this thing works, and we can see it works okay on this kind of a thing where I don't mind having some color in here. And if I open up one of my recent files, let's just do this right here. Now I did this one in a different manner. This one was done, I'll show you how that's done in just a minute. But this is the same kind of effect I would get if I had used feathering. So if I had made my selection, say out here somewhere like that, and I feathered that edge of that selection, I would get this kind of an effect across that selected area. Just deselect that. And that would be okay for this kind of picture. This would be what I would expect to get, just kind of a fading from one into the other, and that's okay. So this would work out just fine. I would get the same kind of effect, of course, on those other pictures. But let's say you wanted to do something a little bit different. Let's say I wanted to have this image here, and I wanted a nice fading out, kind of a glowing effect outside of the image without hurting this image. None of this darkening inside here. To do that effect, I have to do a different kind of effect. Feathering will not give me that. You see, this is what feathering does. It gives you a transparency shift along the edge of your image. The reason why it looks kind of strange here is because there's black behind this. So that's your transparency. Okay, let me just hide some of this stuff here. And I'll zoom out. And let's look at ways that you can have that glowing edge effect if that's what it is that you're looking for. Now up here, let me just make some notes on this. This is my feathered layer right there. And I'll actually put in the pixel amounts. There we go. That's 25 pics feathered. And this one is a clean selection. There we go. So clean selection, 25 pixels feathered. Okay, I'm going to show this one, and let's show our background back here. So the effect I'm trying to get in this instance is a soft edge white coming out from this, and with with the black. So I want to have kind of a nice soft edge feathering into the white shape and putting that on top of the black, but I don't want to be having the feathering coming inside of my shape. I only want it just outside, giving myself a glow. Now you can do that with a layer effect. We're not going to be doing any feathering, but it's going to be a similar kind of process. So choose your layer, go up to Layer, and come down to Layer Style, Style Settings. Here we go. And I'll just choose a glow, and I want an outer glow. And I'll change my color to white since we're working with white. There we go. Outer glow. I'll bring my opacity up to 100, and then I'll just pull the size out like that. There we go. So now what I have, and I can adjust the glow amount in here for the effect that I want to get. Just adjusting the opacity. Choose OK. So what I have now is that glowing effect. I have the fading out into the background, and I don't have any fading inside of my image, but I got that not by using a feathering effect, but by using a glowing edge effect. Same look, same exact thing. I'm going from 100% opacity right here out to 0 opacity there. That's what that feathering effect is all about. There are just different ways to get to that. Let's say I wanted to have this blue color fading out in behind. So I have my solid shape at this point, and then it goes from this blue fading out. I can do that as well. Let me just bring my layer effects back up again here. All I have to do is choose that color as my layer effect color. Change my opacity to 100. There we are. It's now fading out with that color right there. Going out. So get the glow, but the glow is in that particular color. Now again, this is done, this glowing effect here is done by using a glow layer effect instead of using the feathering effect. Just one way to approach that particular problem. Okay, I'm going to hide that one, and let's make a new copy down here. Hide the black, make a new selection like that. There we go. Let's say I wanted to have this kind of a soft edge effect, and I want that from a picture, a soft edge from a picture, and that's what we had up here. I'm going to bring this other new file open. That's our soft edge collage right here. This kind of a soft edge effect here, and I'll just zoom in on this one. Right to our middle picture. This kind of soft, kind of a soft oval effect like that. Now you can do that exact same thing using the same kind of concept that we're doing here. So let me show you how that one is done. Let's just deselect that. I'll bring up our other picture. This one right here. Now on this picture, if I make just a new copy of this layer, there we go, and I'll just hide that one. I'll hide all that stuff and get rid of this layer mask. So there's my original picture right there. Now if I draw an ellipse around this, let me just grab my Ellipse Marquee tool up here, and I grab upper left hand corner, pull it down bottom right hand corner, just like that. I get that nice ellipse shape in there. And let's show our background coloration. So here's our nice shape. Now if I went and used this just as a new layer, is taking this and making a new layer from this selection. So I'll go Layer, New, via Copy, There it is. If I hide that one, there's that soft edge. And the reason why I got that soft edge is because I have feathering set right down here. Notice we have a feathering option right down here under the elliptical marquee. So we have feathering at 35 pixels. Now I could have done it here, or I could have done it using the feathering option here underneath the select menu. It's exactly the same thing. It's just you have an option here to go for it very, very quickly. Let me do this same thing over again. I'll hide that one. Come back to our original. There we go. Put it back up on top. I'll set this feathering to 0. There we go. We're still on the same marquee. I'll pull this one down to the bottom right hand corner. There's our ellipse. Let's now go up here to feather, and there we go, feather. Hit this at 35, exact same thing that I did down here. Choose OK. My feathering is now set on that, and they're going to do layer, new, via copy. Same trick. Let me hide this one, and again there's that same soft edge. So you can do that feathering trick either down here with your selection, or you can do it from the feather in the select menu. It doesn't matter which one it is. You get the exact same effect. Now let me show you a way of having more control over doing this. I consider this being a little bit out of control, because once it's done, it's done. You can't make any changes on that. I have a preferred way of doing feathering, and that is to use a layer mask. So let me show you how that's done. Let me pull this up here. Same image again. Same marquee trick. I'll pull an ellipse on here. Exactly the same thing. There we go. This time though, I'm going to take this ellipse and use this to make a layer mask. So I'll go over here to my Add Layer Mask button. And there we go. It gives me a layer mask in that ellipse shape right there. But it has a hard edge. So how to get rid of that hard edge? Well, you do that by softening the edge of this. And there are several ways to approach that. The easiest way is just go up here to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. And now here, notice that I am on the layer mask side. Notice the light blue outline there. I'm on the layer mask side. Now I can come in and I can adjust the pixel radius down here and actually see how the effect is being applied. There's a 44.3 pixel radius. Let me just type in that 35 that we use. There's my 35 radius right there. This gives me a little more control because I can actually preview it and see what the softening looks like. But it's really doing the exact same thing. It's just in this case I'm doing my softening of the edge on my layer mask. Down here I'm doing the softening of the edge right on the picture itself. But the concept is the same. The look is exactly the same. Let me show you let me show you why you'd want to do it this way instead of using the feathering control under Select or the feathering control down here. The reason is, if you did your feathering down here, which is how this one was done, actually, totally honest here, there we go, this layer was done using this feathering control at 35 pixels. The problem here is, that's it. I'm stuck with that 35 pixel feather on that. I could go back to my original and do it again, of course, but once it's done, you've cut that layer out and you're now stuck with that feathering amount. You can't easily change that. I've altered the picture. That's why I made a copy of the layer, because it's going to alter the image. Same thing up here. This one was done with the feathering tool up here under the Select menu. Same feathering size, same exact look, just Select menu instead of down here. Same problem again. I have cut out part of that layer, so I have deleted material. I actually changed the picture on the layer, and it's more difficult to go back and fix that, especially if I made a mistake and did this on my original image. Always make copies. I'm real big on making copies of your layers. That's why you don't want to mess things up. Up here though, let's say I don't like this feathering amount. Let's say I wanted to have 25 pixel feathering instead of 35 pixel feathering, which this has. Now it's easy to fix up here. I'll just right click and delete layer mask. There we go. Let's put a new layer mask on, just like that. new layer mask, gives me the hard edge. I can go back up here to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. There's my 35 again. It always shows you the last value you used. So you can see my 35. I can now change this to 25. And there it is with a 25 layer mask. So I have the ability to easily change my feathering amount in here when I do it this way. And as you can see, I haven't touched my original image, so my original image is still nice and clean and intact. So that's why I like to do the feathering effect using layer masks instead of doing the feathering effect right on the image. But there are times when you may want to use one or the other. It depends upon the effect that you're going for. Now if you look down here at the bottom, you just come down here and bring this back up again. That's what I did here. Exact same thing. I made my selection around the figures. In this case, I used the lasso tool to make that selection just kind of outside a ways like this. Made that selection around the figures. Use that selection to make a layer mask, and then I use Gaussian Blur to soften the edge of that layer mask to blur the edge out, and that's what gives me that fading out effect. I'm just putting it onto the same picture as a black and white. So what I'm not seeing here, I'm seeing as black and white. It's the exact same concept, but I have more control here. Okay, let's just go a little bit deeper into this discussion. I want to show you exactly what happens now when you're working with that kind of a layer mask. And I'll do it. I'm just going to close that. Let's bring this one up. Let's bring up the white one up here, and let's set this to fit on screen. There we go. And I'll make a selection, just kind of like that. There we go. Just a big ellipse in here, and I'm on this layer. I'll do the same thing. I'll copy my selection, use this selection to create a layer mask up here. So here's our layer mask button. Layer mask, hard edge, and then I can soften that up, of course, using the Gaussian Blur. I'm going to show you exactly what happens in here. I'm going to zoom in on this edge right here, and so you can see where that edge is. I'm going to pull in a guideline. Okay, there's that guideline on that edge, so we know exactly where that edge is. Let's now put our Gaussian Blur on this edge. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and there you go. Notice what's happening. The exact same thing is happening here that we had happen up here under the feather edge here. It's taking the 25 pixels and it's doing 25 in and 25 out. It is blurring it both directions. It's very important to keep that in mind, that it blurs both directions. So it's not going to just take the edge of this and then blur away from your image. It's going to blur into and blur out of your image. That's why a feathered soft edge works best if you're away from the edge of your object. Like this, where my center of interest is the feather in here, and I have my soft edge is away from the edge of the feather. If I had come in here and made a careful selection of just the edge of that feather and then blurred my edge, did a soft blur on that, it would blur into the edge of my feather as well as blurring out from the edge. So you would have that kind of crossover effect. That's what we were seeing up here. If I hide this and bring this back up, that's what we're seeing on this layer here with the 25 pixel feather. It blurs into the image, into the figure, and out as well. So it blurs both sides. So there you go. That's kind of what happens when you're using feathering. Now it's a very useful technique. We've seen here on a couple of images where it's a very attractive technique. I happen to kind of like it on these two. On the soft edge collage, it works out real nicely for this kind of wedding album type thing, to get a nice soft edge. But again, notice on this one that my edge is quite a ways away from my main focus of my image. My selection is not against the image itself. It's out here someplace. That way when it fades in and fades out, it looks fine. I'm not going to be damaging any of my information. Same thing here. The focal point here is that kiss, and that's, the edge is a long ways away from that kiss. Over here, the image, of course, is the couple, and the soft focus edge is a long ways away from the couple. So that's where feathering works. It works out well if you stay away from the edge of what it is your main focus, because it will feather into your image as well as feather out from your image. And so I got one more on these. Let's just bring back up our other example. There we go. I'll just zoom in on this, and the exact same thing here. This effect is caused by doing a feathered edge right along there, but my selection, if I hide that, is a long ways away from my figures. I'm not trying to feather against the figures because that would then feather into them, and I get transparency happening up here on her hair. I get transparency back here. I get transparency on his jacket. I don't want that. So I'm keeping the feathered edge well away from my figures so that that's not causing me any particular problems or issues. And then I just put my black and white behind them, and it gives me that kind of a neat effect. So there you go. That is all about feathering and where feathering works, where it doesn't work, and exactly what feathering is doing, so you can then think ahead and figure out exactly how it's going to be behaving. This also is a problem when you're making careful selections, is that you will get a little bit of an edge in here. Let me bring up a different selection here. Let me just hide this. I'll hide that. And here we go. One last little bit. This is my same feather. I made a real careful edge selection on this using the refined edge tool, and then I made a layer mask from that selection like I've been doing here before, and it's on a black background. Here's our black background, black layer, and it looks great. And the reason why it looks great is because the feather had a dark background to begin with right there. So that worked. If I put this on a white background, all of a sudden it doesn't work as well because we're seeing some of that dark background peeking around the edges of the feather. So it's one more little thing. If you're going to be doing this kind of work where you're fading something into a different background, the closer your background can match in color and value to the background that you're going from, the better it's going to be. The further away that is, and white from a dark background is the exact opposite, the further away that is, the worse the effect is going to be. Now, this could be done with real super careful, going in here at a microscopic level and carefully masking everything out. It can be done, but it's real tedious and painful. And if you want to have something easy, if you want to save yourself these kinds of problems, then you want to try to have a background that's similar in value to what it is that you're going from. So if you're, for instance, taking a picture of a person at night with a night background and you want to put them in front of some buildings, try to find buildings at night so the background is still in the same value range, dark value range, and you'll find it much easier to get away with that kind of a selection. One last little note on selections is something else that I tend to do. Let me just hide all of this stuff. This is just a personal habit of mine. When I am using my lasso tools, I tend to use the polygonal most of the time. I normally have mine set at 1 pixel feathering. It's a very small amount, just 1 pixel, microscopic almost amount of feathering, and that just takes a little bit of the edge off. It's so small that you won't be really seeing any softening of the edge visibly, but it's going to help a careful selection get rid of that kind of paper cut effect edge. So the real small feathering. That's the only place where I really use feathering myself consistently. Otherwise, I will always try to do feathering by using a layer mask instead of using the feathering tools. So there you go. Probably more than you ever wanted to know about working with and doing feathering, and more importantly, exactly what feathering does, why feathering does what it does, as we see in this example and as we see in these examples over here. So that's exactly how feathering works, why feathering works, and why you get the effects that you do. Just keep in mind, it softens the edge, but it softens the edge of going into your selection and out of your selection. It softens both directions. It doesn't just soften out. So if you need to have it just soften out, you're better off doing that with a different technique, or making your selection out here someplace and then softening it out from there. Stay away from your main figure, away from your main content. In this case, the main content is this rounded cornered rectangle. Okay, so there you go. That's more than you ever wanted to know about feathering. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this